Hello, everybody. This is Chairman Jack of the ULF. Today I'm accompanied by...
Comrade Volgin of Workers' Truth.
So, today we're going to talk about what is New Democracy. And so, Volgin has a pretty good rundown, so I'll let him take it.
Okay, so basically, New Democracy is a concept that was come up by Chairman Mao Zedong of China, and it was his analysis of China's material conditions in the 1930s. So basically, China was unlike other countries like the nations of Western Europe and even the Soviet Union, China was in a unique position. Now, the Western European countries were dominated by the imperialists. Even Russia, which was exploited in its own right, still had an imperialist bourgeoisie. So China, on the other hand, did not. They had a national bourgeoisie that was not affiliated with the imperialists. Now, China was divided into numerous warlord states, and so basically Mao came up with this new system that he called New Democracy that was different than the older versions. Now, he summed it up that there were three versions of democracy. The first version was old democracy, and that is basically like the United States or France or...
The dictatorship of the bourgeoisie.
Yeah, it's a bourgeois democracy or dictatorship of the bourgeoisie. The second form of democracy was the dictatorship of the proletariat. Now that was the Soviet Union, Cuba, DPRK,
Mm-hmm.
Now the third form, those are just modern examples. Of course, they were different at the time. Now, the third form of democracy, the one he proposed, is called New Democracy. And it basically said, look, we're not like Britain or France or even Russia. Like, our bourgeoisie is not affiliated with the imperialists. So we need a form of democracy where these different groups, whether it be the peasants, the proletariat, the national bourgeoisie that is against the imperialists, they come together in their own government and they work together in kind of like a coalition or whatnot to fight against the imperialists.
Yeah. A point that I think should be made is that the peasantry and the national bourgeoisie were called principled groups of the revolution, while the primary group of the revolution was the proletariat.
Exactly.
And it also needs to be noted that it was quite literally impossible to establish a dictatorship of the proletariat due to the fact that the proletariat were barely 1% of the country because there's minimal industrialization, and it was destroyed in World War II, all by the Japanese.
Between the Chinese Civil War and the Sino-Japanese War, industry was destroyed.
It was impossible to establish a dictatorship of the bourgeoisie or of the proletariat because it basically just didn't exist.
And China was before New Democracy period, which it's kind of similar to NEP, but not like totally. But I mean, there are similarities.
A governmental,
yeah,
a governmental or / parliamentarian way of making New Democracy.
Yeah, but like New Democracy is different because China wasn't industrialized yet. They were still before the founding of the PRC, they still had a feudal mode of production. So they also need to collaborate with the bourgeoisie in order to build up the productive forces to establish socialism, because you can't just jump from feudalism to socialism. That's idealism, and
it's
that's
impossible.
Yeah, it's impossible. That's not how it works.
Mm-hmm.
So New Democracy was an absolute necessity to China.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a fundamental wrap-up to it is just New Democracy is just taking these principled anti-imperialist groups that are progressive in nature, such as the national bourgeoisie went up against imperialism, the peasantry, and then having a principled group of the revolution, so it's still quite a socialist revolution, which is the proletariat, due to the necessities at the time, being that there was such a minimal amount of the population being proletarian. So, anyway, that's your basic wrap-up. Thank you all for listening. I have been Chairman Jack.
This is Comrade Volgin.